Now that our knitting is complete, all that's left is to seam up our mitts into their final shape. To do this, we're going to introduce a couple new tools. First off, we'll have a measuring tape. We also have a blunt tapestry needle, and then I also have some of these T-pins, but you could also use safety pins, and I'll show you what for in just a moment. While a tapestry needle isn't included in your kit, they're fairly easy to locate. Your local yarn store will sell them, but a lot of the bigger box stores do too. And of course, if you have a knitting friend handy, I'll bet they'll be willing to loan you one. To finish this piece, we're going to start by folding it in half lengthwise. We're going to start by seaming up from the cast-on edge to where our thumb will start. That seam is going to be 2.5 inches. So if you want, you can measure out approximately 2.5 inches from the start here, and you can place a little marker. I'm using a T-pin, but you could certainly use a safety pin or a locking stitch marker if you have one, just to mark where that thumb is going to start, for my reference. The opening for the thumb is then going to be about 2 inches. So I'm going to measure about 2 inches here and place another T-pin for my reference. I now know that I'll start seaming from here to here, leave a hole, and then begin seaming again from here to here. Now that we have the areas that we're going to seam up marked, go ahead and reorient your fabric so that where we're going to seam is right down the middle. This will be a lot easier to see where we're going to be seaming. Once your tapestry needle is threaded with your yarn, go ahead and use the whip stitch to seam these two sides together until you get to your first marker. To perform the whip stitch, go from one side of the fabric to the other matching side of the fabric and pull through. Repeat. If you try to move through every stitch and its corresponding stitch, it should go fairly easily and you should be able to see where you're going without too much trouble. If you get off a couple of stitches here and there, it really won't matter in the long run. The object of the game with the whip stitch is not only to try your best to align each side evenly, but also to continue inserting in the same direction. So I'm constantly going from the right to the left, and then I'm whipping back to go from the right to the left again. Once you've reached where your first marker is, go ahead and unthread your needle and just leave this yarn for a moment. We're going to repeat the same process on the other side. Thread your tapestry needle, and we're going to go from right to left. From the right side of the fabric into the left side of the fabric. Once you've reached where your second marker is, go ahead and try on your mitts. Of course, if you have pins in it like me, you may want to remove them before trying it on. At this point, if you feel like your hole is too small or too big, you can always unpick a little to make the hole bigger, or you can go ahead and seam up on either side that you feel is more comfortable to make the hole a little smaller. Once the hole is exactly the size that you'd prefer, go ahead and remove your hand, and we're going to take care of these final edges to hide them. Doing this last part is called weaving in your ends or burying your ends. This process is only to secure these final ends and hide them so that not only will they not unravel, but they also won't be seen on the wrong side of the fabric. There are many techniques and different ways to hide your ends. Since we conveniently have a seam here, I'm actually going to hide these ends in the seam. To do this, I'm going to rethread the tapestry needle. And for example, this thread is attached to this seam here. So I am just going to skirt the needle through these stitches for about an inch or so. If you pull the yarn a little bit, it will release any extra tension. And then I'm going to skip that first area where I came out and then go back to where I began. Once your end has been woven in, go ahead and trim it quite close to the fabric. And you can throw the rest of this out. Repeat for the other seam here as well. Thread the needle, put it through the seam allowance here for about an inch, pull gently, pull back so we can release any extra tension. Skip that first area where we came out of so that it doesn't unravel, and then go back the way we came. Again, trim the yarn, and you're good to go. All that's left now is to turn your mitt inside out and put it on. Repeat this process for both mitts, and congratulations, your first ever project is finished. That brings us to the end of our 10,000 New Knitters video tutorial series. I hope you've enjoyed learning how to knit, and perhaps you will pass on your new skill to some newbie at some point soon. Thanks again, and happy knitting.